It's the greatest podcast in the history of the world.
It goes high up and under the full foot.
Mackey's taken a ripper! He has a bounce, he crosses 50, he pins the ears back, and he drills the goal!
All the latest news and views from around the VAFA.
Here's the big man!
The big guy!
He's done it again! This bloke extracts some of the finest!
All thanks to MECWACARE, proud partner of the VAFA.
Makes a name for himself with these long bombs from outside the arc. It's a long bomb from outside the arc!
This is for the love of the game.
You can tweet that and hashtag it bloody good.
Welcome along to For the Love of the Game for another week. Thanks to MECWACARE, looking after 16,500 people around Victoria each and every week. Jason Bennett alongside Paddy Grindlay. Welcome back.
Hello, Jace. Geez, I'm happy to be back in my chair. I was listening to you, Cal, and Matt do your finest work last week, and I didn't know if I was going to get the invite.
That's the old rule in the media. Don't take holidays.
Don't take holidays. Happy birthday to my grandfather, 80 years young, leaping over fences down in Yea that weekend. But yes, back in the chair to talk amateur footy. What a weekend we had across all divisions. Can't wait to unpack it all with both of you. Matthew Donald, you've got the chair again.
Paddy, Jace, yes, I had a blast last week, both here for the love of the game and then, of course, on the weekend, and it's good to be back here once more.
Let's begin at Princes Park with an absolute thriller. Old Brighton prevailing by the barest possible margin over Old Haileybury, and it wasn't really shaping as a nail-biter early. The Tunners dominated. They kicked 5-6 to 2 goals. Early in the opening term, they had 22 inside 50s to 9, but Daniel Ward's men flipped the game around in the second term, controlled the territory battle. They kicked 5 unanswered goals and an 8-point halftime lead. The Tunners struck first in the final term. They got within a point. Ben Pryor kicked a goal at the 8-minute mark. Cody Gunnawarden had responded from a free kick at the 18-minute mark to re-establish a buffer for the Bloods. Then Alfie Jarnestrom crumbed a ruck contest to tie things up at the 22-minute mark, and then a couple of late behinds to lead by that margin. Matthias Rose's quick snap at the 29-minute mark missed to make it a one-point game, and try as they might, the Bloods couldn't find the late winner. The Tunners hanging on desperately for a heart-stopping win, maintains their one-game advantage at the top. Joining us is their coach, Marcel Bruin. Soupy, thanks for your time. What a game that was.
Yeah, thanks, Jace. Thanks, Matty. Yeah, it was a ripper game. I think I said after in the post-match that if you're a neutral observer, you've just witnessed a really cracking game of amateur football, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? You know, physical, quick, highly skilled, although at times it wasn't, but there was a huge amount of pressure on the game. And yeah, the result was we were quite fortunate to come away with it, but in the context of the season, that's really good for us.
Marcel, congratulations on the win. Terrific performance from your boys. And we've been quite accustomed to seeing your team play very well this season. I'm curious how you approached the week, because it is slightly different coming off a first defeat of the season. You've played so well up until that point. I'm just wondering how you approached the week, whether there was a great deal of focus on the defeat to Old Haileybury the week before. How did you approach the lead up to this one?
We approached it very much like a normal week. There were a lot of learnings to take out of the Uni Blacks game, Matty. We obviously recognised that we didn't maximise or take advantage of a lot of the opportunities that we created. Again, statistically, we did a lot of things right. Scoring was not one of those, and that was very much credit, as I mentioned to Jace in the wrap-up, that was very much a credit to Uni Blacks and their ability to pressure our disposal. We didn't adapt as a group fast enough to sort of the conditions and the way that the game was playing. So that was on us a little bit, but we got great learnings out of that. So we reviewed it a little bit. We reviewed some footage and took a lot of the positives out of that. We always try and search certainly for positives in the things that we have done. That can then lead into obviously how we frame the training and frame the week leading into the next week's game. And certainly even just post the Uni Blacks game, we were pretty quick to turn our attention to Haileybury, understanding the challenge that they represented, which was significant. And obviously the outcome with the game being a 1-point game was pretty bang on. So, you know, we knew we had to train in a particular way and train some of those areas that we thought we could get an advantage against Haileybury. So that's pretty much how we framed the week, was focusing in on the things that we thought would help us on Saturday. One of those is contest. You know, the other one is obviously a bit of that defence work, because Haileybury can be so lightning and so quick with handball chains and forward momentum that they can get the ball from end to end, or certainly off half back and into their forward lines, where they've got some dangerous guys down there that can kick goals. So that was essentially how we looked at the week, Matty.
Minor Premiers last year, 10 rounds in, you're 9-1 this year. Soup, do you feel like you're a better team than you were 12 months ago? And if so, how?
I do. Yeah, I really do, Jace. We feel like the method's improved. Second year in, and certainly with probably about 18 months worth of training, the particular method that we want to employ within games, I feel like the guys understand how we want to play, the group itself, and that extends to the reserves, and it extends down to the under-19s as well, of which we've been able to bring in a number of debutants throughout the year, either from the reserves or certainly from the under-19. So if you can get those guys on the same page, I think you're going to get a better, a better combined unit. So it's all now about, focusing in on or coaching around decision-making, Jace. We feel like we've had more time, not necessarily to coach method, certainly to refine method, but then do a bit more craft and coach around decision-making, either via under pressure or in the games that certainly the way that the games have unfolded, we can coach around decision-making a little bit more effectively.
So Old Haileybury have been one of the informed teams in the competition. They're always going to pose a challenge. What was the one thing about your team's performance that you think was most crucial at the weekend to getting over the line?
They showed great heart, Matty. Great heart. Under a lot of pressure. I think the message to come out at three-quarter time was, if we don't, I suppose if we panic a little bit when we get the ball back in our hands, or if we play very safe, we're not going to generate scoring opportunities. So we really wanted to get some speed on the ball and try and challenge their very strong pressure and very strong defence. And I think we were able to do that. But towards the back end of the game, where it did start to get tight and it did close down a fair bit, I think Wardy even mentioned again in that post-match that we might have just won some of those moments. And I know that's very broad in sort of language, but we had some unbelievable contributors across the board, but certainly our skipper was absolutely exceptional, as was, certainly we played him a high percentage of game time, so he had every right to slow down towards the end, but he just willed himself to get to contest and to have that clean impact in winning ball back under severe pressure. Felix Flockhart was amazing against a really quality opposition, an opposition ruckman in Jack Bell, and Louis Butler, who we get the benefit of having and have had for a few games this year, who's North Melbourne VFL aligned. We challenged the group at half time, given Stefanakis was having a dominant impact on the game, and we ran Louis with him, and he did a great job in limiting those opportunities if the ball came inside Haileybury's forward 50. So I think, moments where there might have been 50-50 balls, or just that capacity to get to work with a lot of our guys, high half forwards, getting numbers at stoppage or contest, I think we did really well.
You faced every team but Uni Blues so far this season. You play them this week. Of everyone that you've faced, who's impressed you the most?
Well, every game's a really tough challenge, Jace. Every game brings with it its own challenge. I think it'd be a little bit disrespectful to probably pinpoint one team that's provided a greater challenge, because every team has provided greater challenge, whether on an individual basis or as a collective. But, I think the form teams of the competition, Haileybury was one of those, and we really set ourselves to get up not to get up, but because you don't bring different effort to games, but we understood the challenge that Wardy's men represented, given the form that they were in, and certainly the way that they can transition the ball offensively.
Do you feel like the competition's deeper than it was this time last year?
Yeah, I think if you look at that middle band, you only need to drop a couple of games and you're right in the middle of the ladder, aren't you? So, maybe it's not as stretched from bottom through to top. I think the games themselves, as I said earlier, I think our methods improved, which is probably shown in some of those results. But as teams work through the season and bring their players in together on what they want to do, the challenge that represents is certainly more significant as the year progresses. So I think it'll tighten up across the board from top through to bottom. Even De La, who's unfortunately not necessarily hasn't won a game as yet, they're not far away from it. Certainly the effort that they brought, the pressure that they brought, the structure that they brought to the game we played against them was, indicative of a side that wasn't far away from a win. So, yeah, I think that the competition represents great challenges every single week.
One of those challenges, and a unique challenge for this level of competition, is the Tullamarine flu, Marcel. A lot of teams go through it at various stages. From your own experience of coaching at this level, is there anything from previous years that you've picked up on, or any strategies that you've adopted that you think will help to circumvent that issue over the coming weeks?
I haven't worked it out, Matty, but if you've got an insight, mate, I'd bloody love to have it.
I'm not sure there's a cure for the Tullamarine flu, Soup.
It's significant. It's very. I mean, it's across the board at this stage. I think just after COVID, there was a real determination from young men and young women to get out and experience life, and whether that encompassed travel, that certainly flowed through to sporting clubs, and there's still byproducts of that. I think, I'm hesitant to speak about commitment and things like that, because the boys do commit to playing, football this year, and each come to me with an argument effectively as to why they are going away. What it does, it creates opportunity for others, for the guys that, have certainly made known that they're not going away. Whether that's at under 19s level again, or reserve level, or even at the senior level. So it represents an opportunity for guys to get exposure at a senior level. The challenge is when some of these players that potentially were playing seniors prior to leaving come back, can we get them back to, I know they're not going overseas just to go on walks and hikes and do runs. So whether we can get them back.
No hill sprints.
I wouldn't have thought so. They suggest they're going to. Maybe I should get some video evidence.
If the pub's at the top of the hill, there might be a chance.
Yeah, exactly right. Maybe a long walk home after a night out. But whether we can get them back into a position where physically they're healthy and capable of providing great effort on a Saturday. I think it's the touch that's really the significant one as well. It's challenging to come back and just expect that that's going to come straight back, or even come back over 2-3 weeks. So the guys that, certainly return after the double bye, it's a really compressed finish to the year. There's not a huge amount of weeks and time available to get them to a point where we need them to be for us to be competitive and hopefully successful. So that'll be the challenge for us. Can we get enough game time and get enough training into them to hopefully, sort of maximise their ability at the right time?
Well, you've got a fascinating next 5 weeks ahead. Uni Blues, St Kevin's, Old Scotch, St Bernard's and Old Zabs. There's no such thing as an easy game in Premier Men's this year. Soup, all the best. We appreciate your time. Good luck.
Thanks, Jace. Thanks, Matty. Appreciate it, guys.
The weekend's other thriller again involved University Blues. I spoke with Coach Matt Smith last week and asked him how his sanity was going. He said it was just hanging in there. I asked him this week. He said, nah, it's completely gone now. Their second consecutive draw, University Blues. It was a low-scoring nail-biter against Collegians at Melbourne Uni Oval, and for the second straight week, the Blues dominated early. They kicked 3-5 to a goal before the Lions levelled things up at half-time. They kicked 3 goals in time onto the second term and squared it away. Collegians then kicked their 5th goal in a row early in the third. They threatened to break the game open, but scoring then dried up, and it was actually the Lions by 7 points at the last break. Last quarters, as we know, have been a nightmare for the Blues and Paul Matty over the past month. They only had 2 behinds in the first 25 minutes of the last quarter, and it looked like, for all intents and purposes, they were going to head for another one of these heartbreaking losses. But upstep James Stewart kicked a goal from about 47 metres out, put the Blues up by a point at the 25-minute mark. And then the next 4 minutes, the game hung in the balance. Will Putris from Collegians had it 45 out in a 45-degree angle, but his kick just scraped in from behind, so it tied the scores. Siren sounded about 35 seconds later, and they were locked together on 46 points. And it's a really, really critical result in the race to avoid relegation because it maintains the Blues half a game advantage that they built up last week over the Lions. So they still sit half a game clear. Darcy Churgwin, outstanding again. What a season
Yeah,
he's been.
he
He's been
is.
one of the pickups of the season in the VAFA. He's in Team of the Year form. Another 41 touches, 25 contested, 13 tackles, 12 clearances. Match Pinchbeck and Jim Bazzani combined for 26 clearances for Collegians. So our man Matt Smith, Paddy, who's just hanging onto his sanity by a thread in his first year of coaching. What did he have to say after the game?
Oh, poor old Matty. Heavily contested game. They thought that, the team that's cleanest post-contest, you're going to be okay. Wasteful first quarters come to hurt them. This has been the story for the Blues all year. It's just been lapses. It's been first quarters. It's been second halves for a little while. This time it was the first term. Didn't quite get the scoreboard pressure that they deserved. Collegians kept in the fight. And just the inability to execute the simple skills, Jace, which allowed Collegians in from turnover. 2 points is better than 0, as we all know, but it's another one to slip through the fingers of the University Blues in what's been a really tricky first half of the year to navigate.
So Geordie McKenzie, what did you have to say for Collegians?
Yeah, well, it was 8-1 in the first term, as Paddy alluded to, and Geordie acknowledged that. He said, disappointingly, we started very poorly. The intensity was well off the mark, and it was lucky that the margin was only 17 points at quarter time. He acknowledged that the second and third quarters from Collegians were very strong, able to win the inside battle and use the ball well when they were able to get it to the outside. Lukic and Thomas finishing strongly as well made a big difference throughout those periods of the game as well. And said the last quarter was a high-pressure arm wrestle, but the Uni Blues were able to gain the majority of the ascendancy. A draw is disappointing, according to Geordie. Would have loved to have come away with the 4 points, obviously. But there were positives that they can take away from the game, as well as some very clear learnings going forward.
Old Zabs kept their momentum rolling with a comfortable win over St Kevin's at Toorak Park. They dominated early, but it was Scobie who kicked the first couple of goals. Zabs then added a couple late and took a 10-point lead. 20 points down at the main break. Scob managed to hang in during the third term. The teams went goal for goal, and it took until the last quarter for Zabs to really break the game open. They kicked the first 3 of the last term, running away to a handy 32-point win. Snapped a 6-game losing streak against the Scob. It was their first win over them since 2022. And we've talked about the Zabs midfield ad nauseum throughout the season. You shut one down, someone else bobs up. So last week, Sam Fisher had 44 touches. This week, they did a great job. Held him to 21, but then Marcus Stavro gets off the chain. He has 39 touches, 7 clearances, 9 inside 50s. Charlie McIsaac kicked another 4 goals. A sad injury for the entire competition, particularly for Zabs. Josh Kennedy, their big name recruit, kicked a wonderful long-range goal and then departed shortly after with a nasty hamstring injury. So thoughts go out to Josh. For Scob, Anthony Seaton worked tirelessly in defence. He had 28 touches and 9 rebound 50. So a good win for old Zabs, who just keep their momentum rolling.
Yeah, and it gives them, importantly, a 1-game hold on second place from Old Haileybury, and now they're 3 games, Jace, clear inside the top 4 from St Kevin's and Old Scotch.
Uni Blacks continued their remarkable revival. They extended St Bernard's winless streak out at the Snake Pit. Snow Dogs were good early, though. They kicked 5 goals to 2, and they led by 20 points at the first break, and then maintained that margin with a goal apiece in the second term. You gentlemen were both out at the game. What did you make of it?
Yeah, it was a terrific start from St Bernard's, kicking with the breeze at the Snake Pit and rattled on 5 goals within about 15 minutes, but then a couple of really important goals into the breeze for Uni Blacks in the end of the first term. Just gave them an opportunity just to stay in touch, and then St Bernard's defended really well in the second term into the breeze, 1 goal apiece. The third term was where it proved a bit costly for the Snow Dogs. They had countless opportunities to really boost their lead with that win advantage. 1 goal 4, and there was another opportunity that they fluffed in the goal square as well, and the Blacks kicked a couple of goals into the breeze, which gave them all the momentum in the last quarter, and with
so they were 10 points down at 3/4 time, the Blacks. Did it feel to you guys like they were going to come over the top?
Yeah, I think all the discussion that we had in the commentary box was how St Bernard's was going to stop the University Blacks surge, because at this point in the game, and this is also important to note, St Bernard's had that many sore boys. So Mitch Hughes was out in the early minutes of the game with a concussion. Charlie Vague did a calf in the first half. He was done. Nick Tongi got knocked down about 4 or 5 times and looked sore, but he had to continue on. Dylan Gwynn, he looked to have done a really nasty ankle injury, but ended up jogging it off and played out the game, as did an incredibly sore Nick Conlon, who could barely move but had to play out a full forward in the final term. Such was the lack of availability. Lockie Papley
well,
was the other one who was sore. So Steve Alessio was short-handed at the finish, and St Bernard's, I thought, in that final term, did a reasonable job of getting the ball inside 50 and having the chances to create a score, but the University Blacks We know how disciplined they are behind the footy. It was a professional performance to get the 4 points. James Clark was superb. He was our Skins player of the day, plays the inside-outside role really well, and away macking. Took an away macking special in the final term. I asked him if he had one in store for us before the game. He said, "Don't worry, boys, I'll look after you." Went for a flying defensive 50. Matty Donald blew a vocal cord calling it because it was one of the great marks. I think it's got a little bit of traction on social media as well. So great for away. Maybe not so much for his back pocket after fines night at Melbourne University Oval.
So in the end, you mentioned the Snow Dogs. Well, the visitors only had 2 more scoring shots, Blacks, but they kicked 11-8 to 7-10, and really that was the game.
Yeah, and we mentioned it in the third term as well. There were a number of really good opportunities for St Bernards to really push out that advantage because it was set up for them at half-time. They defended well into the breeze. They made the most of it when they had it in that first half. And then there was an opportunity for them to really cash in the third term, but they didn't. Blacks went back the other way and made the most of their opportunities, and that set things up for the visitors in the last quarter to get a big win.
So the Dogs now winless from their last 4 starts. They're now a game and a half outside the top 4. They've got a critical month ahead. Includes dates with St Kevin's, Old Zabs and Old Brighton. The Blacks have kicked a game clear in 4th now, but they also have a season-defining period. They've got a massive fortnight at home the next couple of weeks against Old Zabs and Old Haileybury, which could end up season-defining for them.
It's a really important win. It won't be considered, I think, in the fullness of time as one of the most key wins for the Blacks, considering that they took care of Brighton, they beat St Kevin's, but what they've done by going to the Snake Pit and taking the win is they've consolidated those upsets. So they've consolidated the trip to Scotch, they've consolidated the win over St Kevin's and Old Brighton, been able to get the 4 points in a game that was pretty dangerous and the Snow Dogs would have fancied themselves. And we continue, Jace, with the Road Dogs. They just can't get the 4 points at home. They can get 2, they can get a draw, but Steve Alessio, he'd be desperate to just break the duck at St Bernard's College.
Final game of the weekend in Premier Men's saw Old Scotch ultimately get on top of De La Salle at Camberwell Sports Ground, but it was all De La early. They blitzed the reigning champs. They played a really attractive, expansive brand of football in the opening term. They had 19 inside 50s to 5 and were very much deserved 11-point leaders at the first break. Cardinals then responded, kicked 4 goals to 1 in the second term to get themselves in front at the half by 8 points, and that was largely based on their ball use and their front half efficiency. Scoring dried up in the third term. Luke Healy kicked the only goal of the quarter, entering time on, as D-La got within 3 points at the final change, and it's been such a rollercoaster ride for D-La fans this year. They say it's the hope that kills you, and just as they were starting to think maybe this is our week to pull off one of those upsets, an all too familiar occurrence. Will Clark kicked the first goal of the last term at the 4-minute mark for the Cardinals, and from there they kicked 5 goals in 11 minutes, cracked the game wide open. D-La kicked a couple late, but the damage was done. Old Scotch with their 3rd win in 4 starts. They're within striking distance of the top 4. 1 game behind Uni Blacks, but with a superior percentage. And as we keep saying, like a couple of teams, their next month will be critical. This round robin going on in the top half of the ladder at the moment. And for Scotch, here's their run. Old Haileybury at Scotch College this week. Going to be a blockbuster of a game.
That's huge.
Then they've faced their nemesis team, Collegians, away. Collegians got an incredible record against Old Scotch over the last decade. They play Old Brighton at home and Old Zabs away. So Old Haileybury, Collegians, Old Brighton and Zabs. That's the next 4 games for Old Scotch, which is a really testing stretch, and it might ultimately determine whether they make it and have a shot at defending their title in September. Very, very interesting month coming up for Old Scotch and De La Salle. What did Mark Nat have to say about the Cards?
Well, that run of 4 losses feels a long way away now. So really important, I think, to shout out Harry Dixon, who was a 17-year-old who made his club debut. Mark Nat noted that De La were strong around the contest. They pressured them into turnover. He was pretty impressed with Nick Hyland's men. Arm wrestle in the third quarter, but it was a strong closeout from the Cards, which is what you expect from the reigning premiers, Matthew.
Yeah, for Nick, he was really thrilled with the first 3 quarters that his side put together. He thought the pressure was right up there and forced turnovers and created a host of opportunities for D-La, but they just couldn't keep it going for 4 quarters. Scotch getting a couple of goals early in that final term just sort of broke the game over, and from there they were chasing it.
Yeah, I think best footy all year for D-La. I think they are a massive chance of breaking the duck this weekend.
Their last 2 weeks have been excellent.
They're getting closer.
Yeah,
they're getting closer.
Very, very good against Old Zabs and Old Scotch. It's just a question of can they put it together for long enough to pinch a win. Maybe it's this week against Collegians. That wraps up Premier Men's for this week. After the break, Paddy's Premier B report. For the love of the game.
Are you looking to grow your business? William Buck are more than just accountants and advisors who can develop strategic growth plans for your business. With over 125 years' experience, William Buck has expertise in navigating through challenging times and has been working closely with the VAFA community, creating positive change for individuals, businesses and community organisations. William Buck's team of specialist advisors work collaboratively, providing you with 360 support. Schedule a complimentary consultation today by visiting williambuck.com.
Tickets are now on sale for the VAFA's 2025 Big V Gala Dinner presented by City Power. It's a landmark event, the largest function that VAFA has ever staged, and it's celebrating 100 years of Big V representative football. This historic evening will serve as the official opening to the Rep Football Weekend, offering a unique opportunity to honour the legacy of the Big V and its enduring significance within the VAFA community. The Big V Gala Dinner will bring together past players, coaches, club representatives and supporters to reflect on a century of tradition, achievement and pride. The evening promises to be one of the most significant in the VAFA's history. You don't want to miss it. It's at Centrepiece at Melbourne Park, Thursday the 10th of July 2025. Tickets now on sale at vafa.com.au.
Hey guys, at GYG we never compromise on the quality of our food. That's why we only serve 100% free-range chicken. We're on a mission to reinvent fast food, because who said fast food had to be bad food? Love ya.
Welcome back to For the Love of the Game. It is time to talk Premier B. Paddy Grindlay, your specialty. And this crazy season just keeps getting crazier. What did we have out at Old Trinity? Old Trinity versus Willie CYMS. We were really looking forward to this game as a blockbuster, and so it turned out to be.
Yeah, good to be back in the chair.
Welcome back.
Yes.
Again.
You did a wonderful job in my absentia,
you do your best. Hashtag role player.
Stands up at the right time. Big round of footy. We have to talk, of course, about the Trinity Williamstown CYMS game. This one was probably circled, you'd think, by the people down at the Fearon Reserve. They really want to take a big win on a big ground this season. They were belted earlier in the year, it's fair to say, in the second half against the Tees in round 2, and really wanted to sort of make a bit of a comeback and have an improved performance, and they certainly got that. This game was tied well into the final quarter, 69 points apiece as time ticked towards 0. And it was a really contested game of footy as well. It looked for all money that we'd have our first draw of the Premier B season, which is about the only result that we haven't had over the course of this crazy season. But it was the moment for Christos Manasakis and also Jack Jenkins, who managed to wax together along the broadcast wing. It was a broken play. It was a lot of overlapping handballs. Tom Wen slaps it inside 50. Jack Jenkins gets loose. He had a shot from 40 metres out, unimpeded.
Kick it!
Just had to get rid of the footy.
It was so funny, wasn't it?
3 seconds remaining. No one was wiser to that. Maybe a couple of the timekeepers watching on. He kicks a point. The Tees go up by a point, and then the siren sounds. And
literally while the goal umpire signalling, the siren goes.
And it's a remarkable result because, of course, after beating Old Ivanhoe, they're now neck and neck on percentage for first spot. So they take first position and they look at Play HQ. They look at what Old Ivanhoe has been able to do at Glen Huntly Park, which is a ground that Caulfield Grammarians have not lost at this season until this weekend of footy where the Hoers were able to get the job done. Just the class, the likes of Patrick Nash and Billy Murphy late in the game. I spoke to Jared Geeshan about this one. He was particularly pleased with their third term. We know that Caulfield Grammarians play that little ground, which is heavily wind affected exceptionally well, both with and against the breeze. They had the best of it in the first half. Caulfield, Old Ivanhoe were able to sort of hold the game up in that third term, were able to go into that contest ahead by a point with the wind at their backs for the fourth term. And then early goals through Billy Murphy, as I mentioned, and Rowan McKenzie probably broke the back of the fields and they were pretty much unimpeded from there. So it's Old Ivanhoe atop the ladder still by 7% or so from Old Trinity. And that's a 2-game hold on the top 2 positions back to a host of chasing teams, which we'll get to.
Old Carey and Old Geelong amongst those chasing teams, and what a game they played out at Como Park. Old Carey looked to have the game completely under control, and then Old Geelong came storming home in the last quarter, got within a kick, but couldn't quite get over the line.
Yeah, the Panthers hot to trot to start. 7-goal opening term, took advantage, but it's a bit of a sad story about this. They ran out of legs late because they were down one on the bench from fairly early on. Connor Ogilvie, a 22-year-old forward who's been pretty good this year, unfortunately suffering a broken leg.
Yeah.
Which is a shocking story for him.
And we should actually mention just quickly in Old Trinity, massive injury for them, Charlie Beasley,
yes,
with a broken collarbone.
Yes, there was a big tackle as well. And also, while we're on the point, Will Smythe of Williamstown, who kicked 4 goals in the first half of that game against the Tees, went down with what looked like a pretty nasty, to be honest, leg injury as well. So I know that they're getting some scans on that. So fingers crossed that that's all okay.
Apologies. Back to Old Carey, Old Geelong.
Let's keep rolling here. So it was Old Carey to start. Old Geelong worked their way back into the contest. Were probably too far back at the end of things. The Panthers, Luke Giles admitted they probably did run out of legs. They didn't really want to focus on the way the game ended because they were one rotation down from early in the piece. It was interesting to talk to Luke about how he coached that final term because we hear a lot about, ice the game, ice the game, ice the game. I asked him what that actually looks like, and he said, well, we were just trying to make sure the ball was kept boundary side. We didn't allow the Ogs into open space, and they were able to hold on by a couple of kicks. Really disappointed was old Geelong coach Nick Dixon. They weren't able to play at the required level for long enough, and the start of the game was quite poor. They'll be looking to address that next week. A shout out to Mickey Nichols of the Ogs, who's enjoyed a really strong season, 15 disposals and 5 goals for him.
Critical win for Old Camberwell. They were on a 4-game losing skid. They took care of Hampton Rovers at Gordon Barnard.
Yeah, the big story here is just a couple of stat lines. So you got James Allen of Old Camberwell, 43 disposals, 23 contested possessions, 18 clearances, and 205 Premier Data ranking points through the middle of the ground. And not to be outdone, Chris Perkins of Hampton, 40 disposals, 13 clearances, and a goal. That's his 6th game of the season with 34 disposals or more. So he's fought really hard in what's been a difficult year for the Rovers. Caleb Finlayson, 5 goals for the Wellers. Liam Thomas with 4, 2/3 of the Wellers' goals between them. It's a pretty competitive and high-pressure game. Neil Connell mentioning to me that it wasn't exactly a game that rose to great heights, such was the contest and pressure involved. Hampton sticking with the Wellers for a long time before the Wellers break kicking free in the second half to win that one by 31 points.
And the final game of Premier B for the weekend saw Old Melburnians kick away after quarter time. They kicked 13 goals to 5 after quarter time, and that 6-goal last quarter.
Yeah, the OMs 1-4. They were a few weeks ago, and they've now won 4 of their last 5, and they're now right in the mix. So it is such an even competition, and it was my favourite stat. It crossed the VAFA for a couple of weeks with how the quarters were going for Nathan Brown's team, the OMs, because they'd won the one game, but they'd won the second or third most quarters at one point across the season. So their method was good enough. It just was their lapses that were costing them. They were able to get the job done at home against the Roy Boys, who will be kicking themselves after some poor efficiency with the breeze at Elsternwick Park, of course. Not a ground they've played at too often, if memory serves me correctly. Sammy Lauby, we saw some of his best work at William Buck Premier level last year. 5 goals from his 19 disposals. Will Nichols, who's enjoying a superb season, 28 touches and another 2 goals for him. Harrison Grace, good for the Roys with 34 and a goal.
So, Matty, we take a look at this Premier B ladder, and it is still crazy. The top 5 teams only separated by 2 games.
No, it's incredible. As Paddy mentioned, an absolute logjam. So we've got 2 teams up the top on 8 wins, Old Ivanhoe and Old Trinity, separated by about 7%. And then one win separating third from 8th. So Williamstown CYW's, Old Carey and Old Geelong on 6 wins. Then Old Melburnians and Old Camberwell and Caulfield all on 5 wins. And then you got Fitzroy in 9th spot with 1 win. Hampton Rovers at 10th, still looking for their first win of the season. So percentage boosters are going to be worth their weight in gold on the run-in.
So the top 2 teams now, Old Ivanhoe and Old Trinity, have kicked 2 games clear of the field. And then it seems to be a race for those 3rd and 4th spots between Willie, Old Carey, Old Geelong, Old Melburnians and Camberwell and Caulfield. So 6 into 2 does not go.
No, it doesn't. So 3rd and 4th place, it's hotly contested. I wouldn't be counting out Fitzroy as this season continues. Nathan Brown flagged to me, not necessarily to make a run for the finals. They're probably too far back for that one now.
To try and avoid relegation?
Yes. But
so what are they at the moment? They're 4 games behind.
They're 4 games back from 8th. So I think it would be very tough to escape the drop zone. What I'm more interested in is just a couple of performances where they might just ruin a few years, which I think is what the Roys might be taking with them on the way out. It's not been the season for them. Injury and availability has been the story, but their football has been good. And Nathan Brown flagged to me that they will win games on the run home. The way they played was impressive. It was just their conversion that cost them at Elsternwick Park. I think the story over the back end of this year, Jace, before we take a break, is going to be availability. I look to Old Ivanhoe bringing in Luke Scuderi, who had a great year last year, hasn't played much footy this season, played a lot of reserves games. He's been strong on the training track. They brought him in. He kicked 4 goals against Caulfield, and probably without him, they don't win the game. So it's going to be your 30-man squad, not necessarily your 22 that's going to get you over the line.
Speaking of handy recruits, Old Geelong have brought in Archie Lazaro, brother of Charlie, who came straight in on the weekend and had a fantastic game.
Good.
Can play. So that's a very handy pickup. So at this time of the year, when you're losing a few to the Tullamarine flu, if you can bring a couple in, they are worth their weight in gold. We will take a break on For the Love of the Game. Next, we will talk Premier C with our special guest, Guy Martyn, coach of Glen Eira, Old McKinnon. That's next on For the Love of the Game.
Are you looking to grow your business? William Buck are more than just accountants and advisors who can develop strategic growth plans for your business. With over 125 years' experience, William Buck has expertise in navigating through challenging times and has been working closely with the VAFA community, creating positive change for individuals, businesses and community organisations. William Buck's team of specialist advisors work collaboratively, providing you with 360 support. Schedule a complimentary consultation today by visiting williambuck.com.
Tickets are now on sale for the VAFA's 2025 Big V Gala Dinner presented by City Power. It's a landmark event, the largest function the VAFA has ever staged, and it's celebrating 100 years of Big V representative football. This historic evening will serve as the official opening to the Rep Football Weekend, offering a unique opportunity to honour the legacy of the Big V and its enduring significance within the VAFA community. The Big V Gala Dinner will bring together past players, coaches, club representatives and supporters to reflect on a century of tradition, achievement and pride. The evening promises to be one of the most significant in the VAFA's history. You don't want to miss it. It's at Centrepiece at Melbourne Park, Thursday the 10th of July 2025. Tickets now on sale at vafa.com.au.
Hey guys, at GYG we never compromise on the quality of our food. That's why we only serve 100% free-range chicken. We're on a mission to reinvent fast food, because who said fast food had to be bad food? Love ya.
Welcome back to For the Love of the Game. It's time to talk Premier C, and one of the big stories, Paddy, in Premier C has been the rise of the Griffins. Glen Eira, Old McKinnon, who are coming with a rush through the middle part of the season, and joining us now is their coach, Guy Martyn. Guy, thanks so much for your time.
G'day, Chase. G'day, boys. Good to be here.
Thank you for your time, as always, mate. Of course, you came from University Blues last year. You've got a long and storied history in the Yamos, but immediately from the Blues, so from Premier Men's to Premier C. What were the initial most stark contrasts and changes you noticed making the change?
Look, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, the obvious ones are probably the standard. Obviously, is a bit of a drop, but there's a lot of similarities just with the nature of the clubs. Most clubs I've been in, they're all very similar. Maybe the numbers are a little bit less. At Glen Eira, it's a bit of a smaller club, a bit more intimate, a bit more local, but that's really nice. And yeah, there's some super talented players, probably just not as many, say as the sides up in A grade. So that's probably the main difference and the pretty obvious one, really.
Dropped your first 5 games, won 4 of your last 5 to start turning things around in a dramatic fashion. What were you thinking? Sort of 3, 4, 5 weeks in, a couple of heavy losses. But did you feel like there were some positives and things that you were working on and getting closer towards turning things around? Because it's been a dramatic turnaround.
Oh, look, yes. I mean, you could go into this for a while, but conscious of time. Look, we've also played teams over the last 5 weeks that are, not in the top 4. So let's not lose sight of that. We're definitely playing some better football, but we haven't played the top 4 sides over the last few weeks. Look, I was thinking about, and you'd probably ask a question like this, and I think just at the start of the year, I was sort of figuring out the guys a little bit. Like many clubs, pre-season isn't ideal. We didn't have a ground. We didn't have an actual ground or goalposts until the lead up to round 1, which wasn't ideal. Just a few little things weren't going our way. And I even think the couple of the blowouts against St Bede's and Bowie, whilst, we were obviously nowhere near winning those games, I think the final margin probably wasn't representative of those games. We probably just got blown out towards the end of each quarter and towards the end of the game. So we were sort of with those guys. They just got on top the longer the game went on, which, they were better sides and had better quality players out there. But I think, a casual observer just looks at the final margin, whereas guys that were involved know that there was a little bit more to it. So we've been working on some things and made some adjustments with some personnel, some positions, some priorities, and I feel we're playing a lot better footy over the last, as you said, 4 or 5 weeks.
What makes up that better footy, Guy? What kind of brand do you like to play?
Well, look, as I said, you come to a new club and you sort of speak to the people involved, the supporters, coaches, players, and what to work on, and we sort of worked on trying to move the ball a little bit, which is getting better, but not, as I said before, not having a ground to train on and not having a ground to defend on, like an entire ground. We got really found out against the better sides of Bowie and St Bede's early on in the season when they were just sort of making the ground big and spreading us, and we couldn't handle it. So we're getting better at that. And I guess we've probably just highlighted that we're a better side when our focus is sort of defence and accountability and worrying about our man first and play sort of some honest footy. Try and be as accountable as possible and then let the offence come off the back of that. So there's been a bit of a shift in mindset. And I think whilst the two drubbings in round 2 and 3 weren't great, it was a bit of a wake-up call for some of the guys. And we thought, perhaps we're a bit behind where we thought we were. So we had to sort of have a bit of a reset and a rethink about things.
Guy, congratulations on the win on the weekend. A very good win for you and your boys. I'm just curious, having a look at the scores. A very tight opening first half, and it wasn't until that second half where you really managed to kick away. What do you think the boys did particularly well in that second half compared to the first?
Well, there's a couple of things with that. Our last 3 weeks, our second half has been a lot better. We've sort of come in at halftime, had a chat about a few things that we didn't do well. Both the last couple of games have sort of been a bit wind affected as well. So I guess making some changes both when we're kicking into the wind and with it. I thought our second half, our ball movement was as good as we've played, and even chatting to the Masnod coaches post-game, having a beer, they sort of commented and sort of said how well we transitioned and moved the ball and made the ground big and spread them a little bit. So we just got on top of them in that part of the ground. I think, our third quarter was unreal. It was a 2-3 goal breeze that they had, and we managed to keep them goalless and kick, 4 ourselves or something.
St Bede's Mentone Tigers this weekend, Guy. It was a pretty tough outing for you back in round 3. What did you learn from that game that you're hoping to apply to this weekend?
Yeah, that was one of the
it was
two.
Tough, yes.
That was,
Sorry to bring that back up, Guy.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. They were up and about. They played really well. Obviously Bank had a pretty good day. I know he's been injured. He hasn't been playing. I'm pretty sure he'd be itching to get back against us, though. Look, how do I say it? Even that game as well, I know, again, the margins, but if anyone watches it closely, there were moments and times, especially early in the game, that we weren't that far off, and a few costly errors and momentum killers really hurt us. And then as the game went on, I think they kicked 9 goals in the last quarter as well.
Yeah.
You kick 9 goals in a quarter. And, small ground, they had 100 blokes behind the goals, Banks on a heater, and they just put it in his area, and he's taken speckies on 4 of our blokes. So it was sort of just one of those days a little bit that everything that went wrong could. I think they were up and about. They were coming off the back of a loss against Ajax on the Sunday prior. Home game. I know there was a WhatsApp message to all their past players saying, let's get down there and support and get back on the winners list. So they were firing. They moved the ball really fast. We just couldn't defend them, really, and then we weren't good enough offensively either. So I think the way our priority is obviously how to defend the entire ground against those guys and just be really switched on, because they play on pretty quickly. They give handball receives at all costs and move the ball pretty fast.
It will help if Jack Bank, Jace, doesn't kick another dozen. I think
Not sure if he's playing. I spoke to him at Big V training last week, and it's sort of touch and go, so he might be back this week. Maybe not. Maybe it's next week.
I know there. I know he's had some. Obviously, he's a St Bede's boy, and obviously got a connection with the St Bede's and Parkdale and all that. I know he had a little bit of a hiccup along the way in getting back. I think his initial plan was to play against Parkdale on the weekend, and so he's been pushed back a week or two. So as I said, I think he'd be licking his lips to try and get back out there against us, but it could be a risk to play him for the sake of trying to fill his boots one more time and risk, re-hurting it or damaging it any further.
And we want him ready to go for the Big V as well on July the 12th. So we're just mounting an argument, guys, as to why they should be just sitting him, just in case Brad Berry's listening, just...
I'm sure he will be. I know he's a knowledgeable guy. He does his research and does his homework. So, Brad, you can have another rest, mate.
We're up to double digits of people who we know now listen to the podcast,
there we go.
which is great news.
And it is a big fortnight for you, Guy. You've got St Bede's, Mentone and Pegs, the two teams immediately above you. And if you are going to make a late charge, this gives you the opportunity to pull a game back on both of those teams. So best of luck, mate. Congratulations, as I say, on the turnaround. It must be great for the confidence and the vibe around your group over the last 4 or 5 weeks. It takes great character to bounce back from a start such as that you had and be able to turn around and make your season a competitive one. So thanks for your time today, and all the best for the next couple of weeks.
No, I really appreciate it. Thanks, boys.
Elsewhere in Premier C this weekend, it was Parkdale continuing their great run. 43-point winners over St Bede's, an impressive performance from them. Parkside, 46-point winners over Paran, 11-12-78 to 5-2-32. We mentioned Glen Eira, Old McKinnon, 43-point winners over Mazenod. Beau Morrison, a thriller, 10-point win over Ajax, 13-13-91 to 12-9-81. And then Pegs, 7-goal winners over Marcel, 10-12-72 to Marcel, 4-6-30 as we check the ladder in Premier C. And Parkdale now, by virtue of the result at Beau Morris and Ajax, they've kicked 2 games clear on top of the ladder at 10 and zip. Then you've got Ajax and Beau Morris locked together on 32 points. Sitting in 4th position right now, 2 games clear of 5th is St Bede's on 28. 2 games back to Pegs in 5th. They're on 20 points. A game back to Glen Eira in 6th on 16. Another game back to Mazenod and Parkside. Another game back to Marcel. And then Paran sit on the bottom of the table in Premier C. Time for a break in For the Love of the Game. We'll talk divisions with Braden May and our special guest.
Would you like to get more closely involved with footy and enjoy the unique camaraderie and bonds that exist in and around footy clubs? VAFA clubs are always looking for volunteers to assist with the weekly running of the club, both on and off the field. Log on to vafa.com.au and check out our club directory to find a club near you.
Keep up to date with everything that's happening around the VAFA by subscribing to our socials. We're on Instagram, X, Facebook, LinkedIn and TikTok. Join in the fun with the best pics, videos, stories and reels from around the competition. Send us your best and we might share them around the league. VAFA Socials. Search VAFA and VAFA Women's on your favourite platforms.
Welcome back to For the Love of the Game. Thanks to MECWACARE, servicing 16,500 people around Victoria each and every weekend. It is time to talk the divisions. We're going to start with Division 1. And the story of Division 1 so far in 2025 has been Ormond. The Monders have been flying. They are 10 and zip as we enter the second half of the season. And joining us to tell us how and why is their coach, KYLE Pinto. G'day, Kyle.
G'day, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for your time, mate. We appreciate it as always. Well, the how and the why. What have you put this great growth down to? You sit 2 games clear on top of the ladder at 10 and zip.
There's always a little bit of luck when you're 10 and zip, I think. But I think the biggest thing is probably just our structure, our organisation, and our defensive setups, which we've probably been 18 months to 2 years, I guess, now in the making. So it's probably the consistent voice from myself and the coaches to probably get us to the position that we're in. So I'll put it down to the defensive structures, to be honest.
10 and zip, Kyle, but as I look through all your results across the course of the season, you expect to see beltings. You expect to see a team really beating up on the opposition every week. That's not been the case for you. How have you found the standard across Division 1 as a whole?
It's a very good standard, actually. So I think it's improved considerably from last year. And to your point, we go into every game thinking it's going to be a hard-fought game. And even looking at our results even closer, I don't think we've ever won a 4-quarter game or put together a 4-quarter game just yet. So, it's definitely a slog and a challenge. And even on the weekend against Elsternwick, who, looking at the ladder, you'd think, that's an easy victory for us in terms of ladder position. But, they kicked the last 5 goals of the game and got the deficit from 40 points back to 20 pretty quickly. So, it's a very consistent competition, which is great. So, I think the 10 and zip is, while it's fantastic to look at, it's probably not as reflective as our dominance, and we're certainly not looking at it as a complete victory just yet. So, we've still got plenty to work on, which is really exciting.
Yeah, Elsternwick definitely a team to watch in this division. They've got a couple of players in. They've regained some players. They've built very nicely over the last couple of weeks, and you can see an uptick in their performances, Matty.
Absolutely, you can. Kyle, congratulations on the start to the season. It's quite an achievement to be 10 and zip at this point in the campaign. You mentioned that what's got you there are the defensive efforts of the team. Who are some of those players that you turn to from a defensive point of view to really set the standard in throughout the rest of the lineup?
Well, I think the biggest thing is probably in that midfield. We've had Flynn O'Toole come on board for us this year, so he absolutely gives us first use from a dominant ruckman. So our clearance numbers have been really important, but we've got some really good tackling midfielders. Everyone who played on the weekend all had a tackle. Ryan Constanti comes to mind. He laid 15 on the weekend, and the week before had 13, and his tackle numbers are super impressive. So I guess we just have that mindset of defend first at the contest. Well, albeit we obviously have a hit to target, but yeah, I think everyone who rolls through that midfield, we have a heavy reliance on defending first, and our back line in particular is really well led by our captain BJ and some senior heads in Matthew Oaten and Jeremy Simon. So they're the ones that come to mind, and I guess the other two are two 17-year-olds, Harry Ross and Mason Thatcher, who have played every game for us this year, and their defensive efforts, albeit they're slight young men, their defensive efforts are exceptional. So we definitely pride ourselves on being able to tackle and defend well, and then we just let our ball movement take over from there.
And then at the other end of the ground, you'd expect the team who's on top of the ladder undefeated would have one or two sharpshooters really leading the line in the leading goal kicking stakes. Sam Bailey, I think, is equal 8th and is your top goal scorer with 18 for the season. So no real standout goal kicker, but it must be pleasing to have such an even spread of contributors across the board for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam Bailey missed on the weekend and has missed a few games playing for the Dragons. So it's really pleasing to see our leading goal scorer being a 17-year-old young man playing at Dragons. But yeah, to your point, we don't have I guess a notable goal kicker in terms of the tally, but we have had a fair bit of injury, and probably our big key forward and our big signing over the off season being Tom Nichols. He kicked 5 on the weekend, and we've probably had at a guess it would be 5 or 6 that have kicked 4 or more. So while we have a nice even spread, we definitely believe we've got the firepower in that front half to be a bit of a problem, and we're the second highest scoring team in the division. So finding goals isn't an issue. So I think from a coaching perspective, if we have that even share, it's probably a good thing, right?
Kyle, a disappointing end to 2024. Obviously, you dropped your last 3 games, including that first final where you came rattling back from 26 points down at three-quarter time against UHSVU and fell 5 points short in the end, kicked 4-5 in the last quarter to a goal. Off the back of that, seems like your group's real, as a coaching panel and also as a playing group, are real steely resolved to go to that next level. I understand you guys get all your games filmed every week. You use video, which is a little bit unusual for down in Division 1, but you guys have decided that's worth the investment in doing that and providing you with those analytical tools to do your homework on yourselves and your opposition. Just talk me through the process that you go through behind the scenes and what you feel that's bringing to your club this year.
We think it's extremely valuable. So we use Premier Data, a bit of a plug there for Premier Data. But I'm a school teacher, so from an education standpoint, we think it's highly valuable to get our games filmed, recorded. We do a little bit of opposition analysis, but more for setup and structure. To be honest, we've got a very, very young list. We've had 4 debutants this year from the under-19s and had 6 players under 19 on the weekend. So we think it's really important to analyse our own performance and have a heavy lens on what we're doing well and what we can improve upon. So we think it's highly important, and hopefully going up to C grade next year, if that's on the cards, all the games are filmed. So it's probably a habit that we want to instill into our players and the coaches using those tools. So the players all get a little login and they come to us when we do our review on Tuesday, and they're already analysing their own game and performance. We don't, from a KPI standpoint, we only look at team statistics for ourselves. We never look at individual stats. So we don't want to highlight individuals going out there and chasing kicks and possessions, and we make that very clear for our goal kickers as well, that the KPI isn't about goals. We really want to reward front half tackles and setting up and organising in that front half. So we think it's a really, really important tool, and if we are in D1 next year, it's something that we've already committed to as a club that we'll continue to use.
That's fantastic, and full credit to you, and I think it sets a great example across the VAFA. And look, it does take an investment, Paddy, to do this sort of thing. You've got to find the money to do the match filming and to pay Premier Data. But I think Ormond are a poster child for just what it can do for your footy club, what it can do for the individual players, what it can do for your coaching staff. So, Kyle, I say to you, congratulations, hats off to you, and best of luck for the road ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Great to catch up with KYLE Pinto. Ormond doing some wonderful things in Division 1 this season. Speaking of doing wonderful things in the divisions, our VAFA newshound, Brayden May from News Corp and Community TV is with us each and every week on For the Love of the Game, and he joins us now. G'day, Braden.
Hello, guys. How are we?
I'm very well, mate. You're just having some extensions, mate, on the Chateau LeMay, the rivers of gold that are flooding in from reporting on the VAFA?
Oh, we love any extensions at the moment, but just getting the little bit of work done just to keep up the maintenance.
Beautiful. Well done. We'll start with Division 1, actually. We just, as I mentioned, we just spoke to KYLE Pinto and Ormond doing wonderful things at 10 and zip. But I tell you what, this ladder's starting to close up a little bit. Oakley starting to make a bit of a move.
Yeah, which is really exciting. Like, they're only just 0.21% outside the top four. Like, they were a bit of a team. I think they were a bit of an unknown coming into the season when we recorded the preview podcast, just because they lost so many key players. But a really good win over Preston Bullants, who sit in fourth at the moment. Like Luke Ashen's a guy we've spoken about before. He extended his lead at the top of the goal kicking charts with 4. But the name that caught my eye was a young fella by the name of Elliot Black. He kicked 4 on the weekend. He was named among the better players. It was his best tally of the season, and I think he's now played 9 or 10 games in the senior side after playing in the club's 19s last year. So they might have unearthed a bit of a gem there.
And now Oakley joining Preston Bullants in a share of 4th spot on 24 points. And the team immediately behind them, one game back, is Brunswick.
Yeah, they're a side, again, I think we spoke a lot about in pre-season, and they had a really good win that I think you would expect them to have on paper, beating Therry Penola by 56 points. But something that caught my eye, just as you do, one of the great things with the Player HQ system, you can go back and see where guys have been through the year. But Paul Scampolino, he's been in a fine run of form in the last 3 weeks. He recalled into the senior side, and now he's got 9 goals in 3 games, which is probably what the coach wanted in Jason Reynolds. When you send a guy back to find some form, you hope he comes back in and develops this sort of run of form.
So to take a look at the other results around Division 1 to wrap up the weekend's action in round 10. Old Peninsula 57-point winners over Monash. Ormond 21-point winners over Elstonwick, as we mentioned with KYLE Pinto. Elstonwick certainly on the rise at the moment. They are a team to watch in the bottom half of this section. Big win for Brunswick, 56-point win over Therry Penola, 17-13, 115 and 9-5-59. Q 58-point winners over UHSVU as well. 16-11, 107 to 6-13, 49. We'll just check the ladder quickly. In Division 1, it's Ormond, as we mentioned, 10 and zip. They're 2 games clear of Old Peninsula at 8 and 2. A game further back to Q in 3rd spot. They're on 7 wins. And then the 2 teams on 6 wins, as we mentioned, Braden. Preston sit 4th, Oakley sit 5th. And the difference between them is 0.21%, 117.57 to 117.36. So the race is on for 4th spot. Brunswick still in that race as well. They're a game back at 5 and 5. Then a bit of a gap. The bottom 4 teams, UHSVU sitting at 3 and 7, Monash Blues 3 and 7. 2-game gap back to Elstonwick and Therry Penola. But as we mentioned, if Elstonwick can get on a bit of a run here, they might just make Monash and UHSVU a little bit nervous towards the back end of the year if they can start to rack up a few wins. As we move on to Division 2.
Yeah, Division 2, Braden, I was looking at Canterbury's season to date so far because they've had a massive win over MHSOB, 63-point victors for just their 2nd victory of the season. Tell me all about Canterbury.
Yeah, I think it was probably the standout result of the weekend. When you look at it, like, you probably go into the weekend and think Melbourne High School old boys will get the job done based on ladder position, but to pick up the 2nd win for Canterbury and, importantly, win some percentage as well. Like, they're now up to 79.65%, which is 22% clear of Hawthorn in 9th, and it could be crucial in that relegation battle depending on the results in the second half of the season. But Michael Top, Steve Brown absolutely loves this guy. I reckon he runs 14+ K a week. He led the midfield on the weekend, kicked 4 goals. Michael Wheeler is just really developing in the ruck. Seb Gotch is a name I think we've spoken about before. He's just an excellent footballer. My favourite quote that Steve gave me was, there's Mark Collins who just sorts them all out. So he's an experienced guy that just knows the structures, and he virtually puts his magnet on the whiteboard and just knows what he's going to get from him every week.
Gives the Cobras a little bit of an advantage as they look to avoid the relegation zone through the back end of the year. Now, we're very early for Tunwatch, Jace and Matt, but we do have to talk about someone over at Whitefriars. Noah Sealy kicked 8 on the weekend in a big win over St John's.
Yeah, it's a bit of a remarkable effort. I think we spoke earlier in the season when big Sam Kasika went down with injury, expected to miss the rest of the year, and he was a notable forward for Whitefriars last year, the leading goal kicker, one of the better forwards in Division 2. But Noah Sealy is just a name that's caught my eye in the last couple of weeks. Before this year, he hadn't kicked more than 2 goals in a season. Now he's got 26 to be one of the leading forwards in the competition. Defenders are used to chasing the big forwards around. I reckon Noah's probably enjoying the opportunity to snag a few and talk it up to his other defenders.
So 63-point win for Whitefriars over St John's. Canterbury winners, as we mentioned. The other results, West Brunswick by 27 points over South Melbourne. St Mary's Salesian continue their hot form. 80-point victors over Hawthorn. The Old Yarra Cobras get it done over Aquinas. And we'll flick over, Jace, to the ladder. St Mary's Salesian 9-1. A game clear in first from Old Yarra Cobras, who are 8-1 and with the draw as well. West Brunswick, Whitefriars round out the top 4. MHSOB and South Melbourne 5th and 6th, waiting to pick up the pieces. They're both 6 points back from the finals playing positions. St John's, Canterbury, Hawthorn and Aquinas round out the Division 2 ladder. Matthew Donald.
Yeah, and to Division 3, unfortunately, there weren't too many heart stoppers this weekend. The closest game, North Brunswick with a 31-point win over Richmond Central, 11-13 to 7-6. Wattle Park got a big win over Swinburne University, 84-point win for them, 21-10, 136 to 7-10, 52. Powerhouse continued their strong start to the season, a 43-point win over Latrobe University, 106 to 63. Box Hill were too good for Chadstone, 102 to 62, so a 40-point win there for Box Hill. And then the biggest win of the weekend was Albert Park over Ely Park, a 103-point win for the visitors, 169 to 66, that final score. And as we turn to the ladder for Division 3, Powerhouse continue to be just that, 9 wins from their first 10 games to start the season. A game clear of both North Brunswick and Wattle Park, who are on 8 wins, down to 4th spot. Richmond Central on 7 wins, Albert Park on 6 wins in 5th. Box Hill in 6th spot with 5 wins. Latrobe in 7th spot with 4 wins. Swinburne, Chadstone and Ely Park round out the ladder.
Braden, Community TV this week, we have got a blockbuster. Matty Donald will be leading the team. I said leaving the team. He just looked at me and went, what? What happened to me?
Such a good job
See,
as well.
that's the media for you, Matty. That's the media. It's the way it works.
Quick.
News to me.
He will be leading the team at Community TV this week. We have got University Blacks versus Old Zabs, a top 4 blockbuster. The Blacks have won 5 in a row. The Zabs have won 4 in a row. They've won 7 of their last 8. What a game. This promises to be, Braden, out at Melbourne Uni.
Yeah, I think it's one of the old 8-point game heading into almost a double bye time. Like, these wins are going to be crucial. Speaking to a few coaches, I think, as you like to call it, Jace, the Melbourne Airport flu is well and truly sweeping through. So if you can pick up wins, especially around the sides against you at the moment, they are absolutely critical. What do you got coming up for us this week as you continue your fine VAFA reporting? Well, we'll obviously have a preview of that game on the weekend. It's shaping up to be an absolute beauty, and hopefully we get a daylight today, Melbourne-wise, with the sun out and everything for it. We'll also start taking a look at some of the key players on the run home, so who's going to shape up your side's finals chances and things like that. And we'll start diving into the Big V coverage and some of the names that are in contention and of previous years as well. Yeah, fantastic. We actually had, speaking of the Big V, we recorded some footage yesterday for the Big V Gala, which is coming up on Thursday, July the 10th. Tickets are still available, but do yourself a favour and get in quick because they've almost sold out. We had the oldest living Big V player come in here yesterday, Braden. His name's Dave Yoffa. He played for Uni Blues back in the 50s. He's 92 years old. His wife drove him in from Berwick to Elstonwick Park here to sit down and do an interview with us and talk about the old days. He played for the Big V in 1954 and 1955. And he turned up and he said, it's the first time I've been at Elstonwick Park since the 1955 grand final that he played in. 70 years since he's been here. He sat here and he had an unbelievable memory. We had a great chat about the Big V and about his VAFA days. He says he's 92 years of age, Braden. The first thing he does every Monday morning, get up and check the ammo scores from across the weekend. It was just wonderful to catch up with a legend of the competition like that. No, that's outstanding. That's what it's all about, isn't it? These types of opportunities, and especially a milestone moment like you want. These guys have helped build the competition into what it is today. Like, without them, who knows where footy would be just in general. Yeah, exactly right. We're going to have some great stories coming up. I know Braden's going to dig deep into the history of the Big V in the coming weeks, so we look forward to that. Braden, thanks so much for your time. Chat to you again next week. Thanks, guys. Speak then. Tickets are now on sale for the VAFA's 2025 Big V Gala Dinner presented by City Power. It's a landmark event, the largest function that VAFA has ever staged, and it's celebrating 100 years
of Big V representative football. This historic evening will serve as the official opening to the Rep Football Weekend, offering a unique opportunity to honour the legacy of the Big V and its enduring significance within the VAFA community. The Big V Gala Dinner will bring together past players, coaches, club representatives and supporters to reflect on a century of tradition, achievement and pride. The evening promises to be one of the most significant in the VAFA's history. You don't want to miss it. It's at Centrepiece at Melbourne Park, Thursday the 10th of July 2025. Tickets now on sale at vafa.com.au.
Great to catch up with Brayden May, who's doing some wonderful work for News Corp and Herald Sun, reporting on all things amateur footy. Gents, let's take the opportunity to check in with William Buck Premier Women's. Old Scotch 50 defeating Q14 by 36 points on the weekend. And in the community TV game, West Brunswick showed out 65-9, 56-point victors over at Boss James Reserve. Elsewhere, St Kevin's back to their winning ways, 16-point winners over Fitzroy, and Williamstown CYMS by 14 points over Old Geelong. Caulfield Grammarians having the bye, still atop the ladder on 36 points, 9 and zip this season. The field's going very nicely. Old Scotch and St Kevin's 7-2 apiece, trailing in second and third. West Brunswick rounds out the top 4 on 5 and 4.
But how big was that win, Paddy? When you look at the ladder,
Yep.
they're at 5 and 4, and then the next 4 teams all the way
Are all
down
chasing.
to 8 are 1 game behind. There's 1 game between 4th and 8th.
Let's break it down with percentage as well, Jace, because this is going to be a rollicking finish to the season. Old Geelong, 4 and 5 at 95.5%. Q, 4 and 5 at 92.4%. Fitzroy, 4 and 6 with the extra loss, the extra game played, 95.3%. So it's very tight. Williamstown also 4 and 6, but with a percentage of 67.8, puts them a little bit further adrift. So that's the 5 to 8 teams. And then in ninth, Beaumaris 3 and 6 on 10 points. And they're not without a shout at chasing down some of the others as well. This will be a really good finish, I think, to the William Buck Premier Women's season.
Absolutely. To have 4 of those teams within range of the top 4. Let's talk Premier B Women's. Maddie, what happened over the weekend?
Well, we had a stunning upset here at Elstonwick Park. Old Melburnians handing Old Brighton their first defeat of the season. A 14-point win for Old Melburnians, 37-23.
The Omelettes, one of the great names in footy.
One of the best
The Oggets
nicknames
and the
going
Omelettes are my favourites. I love that.
In other results, Old Zavs were too good for Melbourne University Women's, winning by 32 points in that match. Old Yarra Cobras fell to St Bede's Mentone by 13 points at Doncaster Reserve, so that's a big win there for St Bede's. Westbourne were too good for Port Melbourne, winning by 26 points, 38-12. Marcel had the bye this weekend, and as we turn our attention to the ladder, Old Brighton still 2 games clear in first spot and do have a game in hand as well, so still have a monopoly on top spot there. Port Melbourne and Old Melburnians locked in with 7 wins each in second and third respectively. Westbourne have moved up to 4th.
Big win.
And Old Zavs in 5th, St Bede's in 6th. They've each got 4 wins. Marcelin, who didn't play this weekend, as I said, with the bye, still in 7th spot on the 3 wins. Old Yarra Cobras in 8th with 1 win, and Melbourne University still looking for their first win of the season.
So once again, you look at the race for 4th at the moment. Westbourne have it on 20 points. They're only a half game clear of Old Zabs and St Bede's Mentone Tigers. So 3 teams battling for that 4th spot right now. The top 3 teams look to have kicked clear. They're at least a couple of games clear of that, but that's where the interest is in the ladder there, that battle for 4th spot.
Yeah, it's the percentage of infinity, Maddie, that you mentioned last week on the podcast. Old Zavs and St Bede's with a good 80% at least percentage difference back from Westbourne, but with the extra win can steal their spot in 4th. So that will be one to watch as the season continues.
Speaking of watch.
Oh, here we go.
Ton watch! Thanks to Sherrin. Everyone in the office always just spins their head around and goes, what's going on in there?
Every time you do the live sting, an angel gets its wings, Jason Bennett.
Who's Jace screaming at in the podcast studio? Let's talk about round 10. We had 2 double-figure tallies in round 10, which is pretty good going, given we're right in the heart of
really
June.
Good going.
Like Joey's always going on about, you get to the depths of winter and you can't kick goals in the depths of winter. Well, Joseph, we've got two 10s this week. Sam Littress from University Blacks under-19s booted 10, and James Forrest from Old Zabs thirds kicked 10. Our man Jack Taylor-Evans from Powerhouse, he's back.
He's back.
Kicked 9 goals for the weekend.
Come on, Jack.
He's got 38 from 5 games. 38 from 5 games for Jack. So let's do the sums on that. He's got 8 games left. Oh, he's going to need to lift his rating, isn't he?
7.1.
Will Taylor also kicked 9 for Old Scotch thirds. 9 also to Lockie Dowling from MHSOB reserves. 9 to Kane Hillier, Old Camberwell reserves. 9 to Keegan Mountford from Old Haileybury under-19s. 8 to Noah Seeley, who we talked about with Braden from Whitefriars. 7 from Amir Mayerowitz from Ajax thirds, and 7 also to Max Hughes from Old Camberwell thirds. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 players this weekend kicked 9 or better.
Yeah, it was
That's pretty good going.
It's a real fill your boots weekend. Lots of players getting in on the act.
Our leading women across the weekend for round 10 was 5 goals to Indiana Harrison, who's getting hot for Ormond seniors. 5 also to Sienna McLeish from Old Zabs, and 5 also to Amy Dillon from Brunswick seniors. So our senior leaderboard for the season after 10 rounds, Rory Calvert from Old Zabs thirds. He's sitting on 50 goals. He's halfway. And he's only a game behind if you think of it in those terms.
When do the thirds finish up, though, is the question I'll have to ask to Rory.
Stop being a party pooper, would you, Joseph?
Someone has to do it. Matt's far too positive for me to be able to go with him.
So he's on 50. Jake Dillon from Richmond Central is on 46. 45 to Luke Ashen at Oakley. 42 to Blake Williams from Box Hill North. 41 to Hugh Beasley at Old Trinity. 38 to Jack Taylor Evans after he kicked those 9 on the weekend. 37 to Lucas May, our rising star from last week in St Kevin's under-19s. A couple of goals to Bailey Pays. He's on 36. 2 to Aidan Bartel from Parkdale Vultures, and 2 to Bill Irving from West Brunswick as well. Our leading women's goal kickers this year, Indiana Harrison's jumped into the lead after she kicked 5 for Ormond seniors on the weekend. So she's jumped in the top spot. She's on 30 goals. 3 clear of Hannah Smith from St Kevin's, and Georgia Harris from the Port Melbourne Chargers on 27 apiece. Which leads us into our tips.
Yes, it does.
And Paddy's pretty happy with the way the tips are going at the moment.
Just moving along quietly.
Well, you tipped 8 out of 10 on the weekend, and
Did I?
Joey tipped 7. So you keep just extending your lead bit by bit by bit. You're actually up by 9 now, 69 to 60. You've almost put him to bed.
I think it's a long year at the football, Jace, as you would well know. And you would probably say that if you were ever to get off the fence.
Quite comfortable on the fence, thanks.
Splinters in the back, mate.
Let's talk Premier B tips.
Yes.
Round 11 coming up. Well, given that you're out in front, Paddy, you can tip first, and that gives Maddie the opportunity to just be the contrarian and maybe pull a couple back here. So let's start. Paddy, you'll tip first here. Premier Men's, round 11. Old Geelong, Old Melburnians. What an interesting game this is.
This is good. The OMs are in good nick. The Ogs play well when they play poorly the week beforehand. So that's always been Nick Dixon's thing, is that they've never really fallen in the hole. The other side of things, they haven't really got the speed through the competition with a few wins that they peeled off like they did in 2024. I will take the Ogs to respond.
Matthew?
I'm going to go with Old Geelong as well. Just the home ground advantage for me, although it's going to be very close.
You can't be following me up. This can't be happening again. This happened with Hugo. It happened with Pat Cortazzo. They just went, you know what? This guy knows what he's doing.
He
I'm going to follow him in. I'm sick of it.
Despite that, you're still tipping Old Geelong.
Yep, despite all of that.
I'm really hoping you do vary a little bit here and it comes off for you. Old Trinity versus Old Camberwell. The Wellers in a bit of a hole and have come back and bounced back with a win. Gee, they can make a statement this week against the Tees.
They could. I just think the Tees are going too well to tip against them. I feel like they're the team that is most well suited at this point right now in the season to continue on its merry way and just lock away a top 2 spot over the next month or so of football, notwithstanding the double bias of the Tees and Donald McDonald for me with his new knee.
Could their opposition be Old Camberwell suited?
At the risk of sounding like a genuine copycat.
Come on, Matt!
Hard to go past Old Trinity here in this one.
Hampton Rovers, Willie CYMS.
Willie CYMS for me.
Yeah, Willie CYMS too.
Old Carey versus Old Ivanhoe.
This is the big
interesting,
one.
yes.
So the last time these teams played, Old Carey pretty much led it the whole way until Old Ivanhoe's guns in the last quarter ran over the top of them over at Chelsworth Park. They're going to have to do it away now, the Hoers. This is a massive game. I'm going to tip Jared Geeshan's men on the road.
Yeah, I'm going to do this.
Come on, Daddies!
For me.
Final game of the weekend, Fitzroy versus Caulfield Grammarians.
Caulfield Grammarians.
We've heard good things about Fitzroy in this podcast and that they could pick up a couple of wins towards the end of the year, so I'm going to go with the Roy boys.
Okay,
there we go.
The upset.
There we
go. How we go. Let's move on to Premier Men's round 11, and what a game this is going to be. You'll see it live on the VAFA live stream and SEN app from 1:45. It's our SEN VAFA match of the day this weekend. It is Old Scotch versus Old Haileybury.
At the College.
At the College.
It's going to be a big game. Scotch will be up for this. They're in a nice little vein of form at the moment, Mark Nat's men. The blood's going very well. I don't like to tip against teams when they're playing at their school ground because I reckon they get a little 10, 15%. Yeah. So Scotch for me in a close one. This will be a beauty.
Yeah, I think it will be as well. I really like the way Old Haileybury have gone in the last few weeks, and they could very easily have nicked it last week as well. So I'm going to go with them here.
Uni Blacks versus Old Zabs. This is our community TV doubleheader, as we mentioned. And what a fascinating game this is. If you had have said 4 or 5 weeks into the season, Blacks and Zabs, you would have said Zabs in a heartbeat. But as we mentioned, both these teams in incredible form in recent times. The Blacks are on a 5-game winning streak. The Zabs have won 7 of their last 8. It's at Melbourne University Oval. Community TV doubleheader from 11:35. Blacks or Zabs?
Zabs have played this ground before recently. They beat the Blues in a close game of footy, came over the top of them late. The Blacks are going superbly. I'm going to take Dale Bauer's men again.
Wow, okay.
This is a bit of an upset. I reckon I would have the Zabs as slight favourites going into this contest. And their midfield, the Zabs midfield is supreme, but we know how good the Blacks are behind the footy, that rebound and intercept game that they can get going, especially at home. I think it's going to be pretty difficult to stop them, especially with Campbell Lane away.
And with Josh Kennedy now done with that nasty hamstring injury, so he's gone as well. So Uni Blacks and Old Zabs.
Yeah, I can't wait for this game. I'm going to be working on it on community TV. Cannot wait for it. I'm going to go Old Zabs. They're a really classy outfit, and it's not to say anything against Uni Blacks because their form has been really good over the last month and a bit. It's going to be a really close game, but yeah, I'm going to tip the Zabs here.
And the great thing about it, we talk about how one win can just change a season. It can totally change your trajectory. Blacks win a tight game 5 weeks ago, and suddenly their whole season turns around.
Yeah.
You know, they go from struggling through the early parts of the year, lost their first 4 games, win 1, get a little bit of momentum, 1 leads to 2, 2 leads to 3, and suddenly they're on a tear. Imagine if they can get through Old Zabs this week. They're sitting in the top 4 at the moment. This would consolidate them nicely.
This is, I think, the game of the round, and I'm very glad, Matty, that you'll be able to call the action. It's going to be a nice day as well on Saturday, which is important because we know that Uni Main Oval can get a little bit heavy. Yeah. It's a heavy track, which will affect the way that they move the ball between the arcs. Big ground.
Another VAFA TV live stream, and this one's a belter as well. 1:55 on Saturday, St Kevin's versus St Bernard's. Now, St Bernard's have just got a little bit of the speed wobbles, but St Kevin's have been a bit up and down as well. This feels like a crossroads game for both these teams, but particularly the Snow Dogs.
Well, Matty, as we mentioned in our little William Buck Premier review off the top of the podcast, St Bernard's had about -3 on the bench by the end of the game. They were in the wars throughout. They'll probably lose at least a couple. And this game is being played at St Kevin's College. Last time they went out, they played Collegians and they smacked them in 2024 on a wet day. I think St Kevin's get the chockies.
Yeah, I'm going to go St Kevin's as well. I think it was even worse than that for St Bernard's. I don't think they had a bench, and I think they had 3 blokes who were injured out on the field in the last quarter. It was the walking wounded, and it was a shame for them because if they had a fit side, they were every chance of getting the 4 points. It feels like a real sliding doors moment for both of these teams in terms of finals aspirations this year. Obviously, there's still a long way to go, but 4 points here is going to do the winners a world of good. I'm going to go St Kevin's at home. It just feels like St Bernard's have just as good as their away form has been just in the last couple of weeks. They've just struggled at key moments to get the result, and I'm just going to go with St Kevin's here at home.
Old Brighton versus Uni Blues at Brighton Beach Oval.
Old Brighton, always they just win games of footy at home, don't they? The Blues, it's hard to get a read on them, especially when their recent form is 2 draws in a row. The Tunners have looked a little bit more gettable, certainly, over the last fortnight. I still think they'll be too good.
When was the last team to have 3 draws in a row?
Don't know.
You'll have to consult.
Even 2 in a row. Yeah. 2 in a row is even extraordinary. 3 in a row, phenomenal. Well, you're going to tip the draw.
No, I'm not going to tip the draw. I don't think it's going to happen here.
It wouldn't be ill-advised.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
We'd be delving into the history books if we did get 3 in a row. I think the Giants might have drawn twice.
They did.
They
7
years ago.
And someone else, I reckon.
Geelong, I think.
Yeah.
Brighton and the Blues, who do you like?
Yeah,
Brighton?
Old Brighton, yeah.
And the final game of the weekend, D-La Cell versus Collegians, and D-La just keep getting edging closer and closer to a win. Is this the week they break through?
Yes, it is, Jason.
Wow, okay.
Nick Highland. I've done it once before earlier this season at home, I think against the Blacks, and it was the Uni Blacks who certainly gave me a foot in the mouth, I reckon. So I think D-La this week, Collegians, they've just had a bit of a shocking run with injury. They haven't got the results on the board. Could have been a tough game of footy against the Blues.
And this is a critical game for them. Yeah. They know that the Blues who they're fighting against in the relegation race are facing Old Brighton at Brighton. They've got to get these 4 points, Collegians.
Yeah.
They've got to.
Yeah, well, both Blues and Collegians shared the points last week in that draw. I agree with Paddy. I think D-La are going to be up for this one. I mean, this is last v second last on the ladder, so they'll sense a really gettable opportunity here at home. And I have a feeling that this will be the week where they break their duck, D-La, for me.
Wow, that would be a huge result and a seismic result on the ladder as well. Well, that wraps it up for us this week. Another bumper edition of For the Love of the Game. Thanks so much to MECWACARE. To mention 16,500 people they look after each and every weekend. This is going to be a huge weekend of footy, round
everywhere.
11. Enjoy it from top to bottom. The VAFA competition in 2025. We'll catch you again next week for the love of the game.